February 26th, 2022. In a quiet room in Brussels, an operator at Euroclear receives an order and types a few commands into a terminal. On the other side of the world, in Moscow, $300 billion in Russian central bank reserves simply cease to exist. The money is still there, but Russia can no longer touch it. That same week, 7 Russian banks were cut off from SWIFT, the messaging system that moves trillions of dollars a day between the banks of the entire world, and a bank without SWIFT goes blind and mute. It cannot receive, it cannot send, and it ceases to exist for the rest of the financial planet. More than half the reserves of a G20 nation were frozen overnight. It was the largest financial sanction in modern history, and the message behind it was clear. The dollar is a weapon, and Washington controls the trigger. But the United States made one silent miscalculation that day. They hit Russia dead center. But they did not notice who was watching from the other side of the world, nor what that someone began to plan in that exact moment. Imagine for a moment that you are the finance minister of Saudi Arabia, or of India, or of China itself. You just watched the United States erase $300 billion from an entire country with a few clicks, and an icy question crawls up your spine. What if one day it is me? This is not about liking or disliking Washington. It is about a very cold calculation. If the dollar can be switched off by a political decision, then holding your reserves in dollars is no longer safe. It became a rope around your neck, with the other end in someone else's hand. And here is the detail almost no one noticed. The world's response was not anger, and it was not open confrontation. It was something far more dangerous to the dollar. It was pure silence. Every central bank on the planet ran the same calculation at the same time, without coordinating, and they all reached the same answer: leave the dollar slowly, without warning. To understand what is happening now, we need to go back 13 years before that freeze. There is a document almost no one knows about. It is an American diplomatic cable from 2009, later revealed by the Wikileaks leak. In that cable, United States diplomats report a conversation with Chinese officials, and the content is frightening in how clear it is. China was saying, back in 2009, that its growing gold reserves would serve to weaken the dollar's dominance and help internationalize its own currency, the yuan. Stop and think about the date. 2009, 13 years before Russia was frozen. China already had the plan written when no one was looking. Ever since, each of its steps in the financial system looks random, disconnected, too slow to mean anything. But none of it is random. It is a game of chess in slow motion, where each piece takes a decade to move, and the opponent does not even realize he has entered the match. China does not want to topple the dollar in a single blow. It wants to make it unnecessary, without anyone noticing the transition while it happens. Start with gold, because it is the most hidden piece on the entire board. Officially, China declares to the International Monetary Fund about 2,300 tons of gold. It is the 6th largest official reserve in the world, but that number is a careful facade. Analysts who track gold flows around the world reached a disturbing conclusion. China's real reserves may exceed 5,400 tons, more than double what it admits. That would place China behind only the United States, level with powers that took an entire century to gather their gold. The bank Goldman Sachs estimated that in some months, China bought 10 to 11 times more gold than it officially reported to the world. And why hide all of this? Because turning dollars into gold in silence is an operation of financial warfare. If the world knew the real size of that flight, the price of gold would explode, and the dollar would sink before the hour Beijing planned. And while it fills its vaults with gold, China empties the other hand. It cut its holdings of American debt to the lowest levels in 15 years, trading Washington's paper for the metal no one can freeze. But gold locked in a vault does not move the world's trade. China needed something smarter, And here is the true masterstroke. It did not try to create a currency to fight the dollar head-on. Instead, it built a silent network underneath the system. Today, China has currency swap lines with more than 40 central banks around the planet, totaling an estimated $500 billion. These agreements let any of those 40 countries borrow yuan using their own currency as collateral without needing a single dollar. Think about how this works in practice. Saudi Arabia sells oil to China and gets paid in yuan. With that yuan, it buys whatever it wants from any other country that is also on the network. The dollar never enters that account at any moment, and the network has a hidden power that grows on its own. Each new country that joins makes it more useful for everyone else. Exactly like a messaging app, becomes more valuable the more people use it. Except this app has more than 40 members, moves nearly $500 billion, and runs through no American server. In 2013, China launched the new Silk Road. On the surface, it looked like just a giant construction program spread across dozens of countries. Ports, railways, highways, tearing across entire continents. But beneath the concrete, it was something else. China financed hundreds of billions of dollars in projects where the natural currency of payment is not the dollar but the yuan. The countries that join receive yuan, pay in yuan, and reinvest in yuan, raising an entire trade structure beyond the reach of the American financial system. And in 2016 came the hardest test of all. Nearly $1 trillion fled China in a single year in an attack on the yuan. Beijing's response was brutal. It sealed the borders of money and limited the outflow of capital from the country as much as possible. China chose to be free of the dollar, even at the cost of trapping its own money inside the house, and that choice defines everything. For an ordinary country, trapping capital would be a complete disaster, but when you are willing to pay a price no one else would pay, it is because you are playing a game no one else is playing. And then, in 2025, the plan left the paper and became real oil. The most important transaction of recent years did not have a single dollar inside it. In 2017, Russia supplied less than 1% of all the oil that India imported. By 2025, that number jumped to 40%. Russia became India's largest oil supplier and saved the Indians about $17 billion along the way. But Russia was outside SWIFT and refused to be paid in Indian rupees because the rupee would stay trapped with no buying power abroad. India offered to pay in other currencies, but starting in October 2025, the sellers began demanding one very specific thing: pay in Chinese yuan. And why yuan specifically? Because Russia needs yuan to buy technology from China, and India has yuan coming from its own trade with the Chinese. 3 countries, a chain that closes on its own. India pays Russia in yuan, Russia buys from China in yuan, and the circle completes, with the dollar left outside, watching, never invited. Now the most revealing piece of all, and almost no one in the West realized what it means. There is a platform called mBridge. It is a payment system between central banks that settles transactions across countries in 15 seconds, without SWIFT, without American banks in the middle, and without anyone in Washington able to press a button to freeze the operation. mBridge has already moved more than $55 billion, and the Chinese digital currency accounts for 95% of everything that passes through it. And among its members is Saudi Arabia, the historic pillar of the petrodollar, now seated at China's side at this new table. But the most revealing detail is another one. In October 2024, the bank that coordinated the project, the central bank of the West's central banks, walked out of mBridge. It left out of fear that the platform would become a tool to bypass sanctions. And on its way out, it left the code and the control in China's hands. The referee abandoned his own game and handed the ball to one of the teams to keep playing alone. Put all the pieces together, and the whole board finally appears before your eyes. The yuan is already one of the 5 most used currencies in payments worldwide. Central banks bought more than 1,000 tons of gold for years in a row, led by China and Russia. More than 40 countries are already on the currency swap network, and 159 countries have expressed interest in the BRICS payment systems. And here is the truth no one wants to admit out loud. The United States won the battle of 2022 and crushed Russia financially, but they miscalculated what the entire world was learning as it watched. Every country asked the same icy question, what if it is me? And one analyst summed up the fear of the whole planet in a single sentence. Everything that was done to Russia could one day be done to China, except in China's case, we are not talking about 300 billion. We are talking about trillions. The world saw the trigger pulled once and decided in silence never to stand in the crosshairs again. The answer the world found was not a new king, nor the yuan on the dollar's throne. It was something more subtle and more final. The infrastructure to need no king at all. And when everyone realizes they no longer need the dollar, they will discover they stopped needing it a long time ago. The fall of King Dollar will not be announced. It will be noticed too late.